Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Business Performance USA, our webinar series. This is Victor Dominguez speaking, and we've got a special guest today by the name of Milton Corsi and our perennial special guest, Dr. Jeff Stewart, on the webinar with myself. And we welcome you and are thrilled that you joined us today. This webinar will be lasting 1 hour or just a little less, and we certainly welcome your input. So let me just go over a few particulars here to help you have a better experience with this webinar and maximize your learning and action items following this webinar, because that's really the whole point. We put on these webinars to create vibrant, healthy, and productive workplaces where people really can exercise their true talent and skills and really feel like they're contributing to a greater good. And we know personally that's deeply satisfying ourselves. So the whole point, of course, is for you to have that same experience in your workforce and in your work environment. And that's why we're sharing this webinar today. We do want to hear from you, and you can communicate with us through a couple of simple ways. If you look at the interface for GoToWebinar, you'll see two opportunities to submit questions, or you can just simply chat, whatever you're most comfortable with, and we will be monitoring the questions and chat interface so that we can get your question out there. We do have the audience on mute, and I sort of apologize for that, but with the numbers that we get in attendance, we need to keep the background noise at a minimum. So again, this is Victor Dominguez. Just the only thing you need to do is listen, engage, ask questions through the question feature, the chat feature, and know that we're always here to serve your needs, and you don't have to think of this 1 hour as your sole time with us. You're always free to follow up. So, Milton, if you can hit the next slide, I would appreciate it. I do want to introduce today our guest speaker, Milton Corsi, and of course you can see Dr. Jeff. Dr. Jeff is my partner that co-founded this organization, Business Performance USA, and along with Cynthia Stewart as well. And Milton, of course, is a longtime colleague of ours. We've had great experience working with him and sharing with him, and we're thrilled to have him today. Let me tell you a little about Milton Corsi. He is the president and CEO of Evolution Training and Consulting. Milton has spent 25 years developing people, and he's a strong believer in transformative power of a properly applied education. That means learn it and use it. He spent the first part of his career in higher education as Dean of Administration, where he personally led a team of more than 50, then as Professor of Business and Math, where he was awarded the title Professor Emeritus. Pretty impressive. Milton has a BS in Marketing and an MBA in Finance and Marketing, and holds a training certification from 360 Solutions, a global leader in the development of business consulting and employee training content. Upon his transition from higher education, Milton founded Evolution Training and Consultant, his current company, and has become a thought leader and highly sought-after speaker, trainer, and consultant with an emphasis on developing high-performance teams. And with that, I'll remind you once again that you can contact us. And Jeff, I apologize because there's the typo here, but not on the end. You can contact Dr. Jeff at dr.jeff@businessperformanceusa.org and reach out to us anytime. Milton, with that, I've talked enough, and I'm going to turn it over to you and just let you take the slides and let you do your thing. Thank you, Milton.
Victor, thank you so very much. I'd like to also thank my dear friend, Dr. Jeff Stewart, for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with the Business Performance USA audience today and share with you some of the exciting research that there is regarding the idea of the science of motivation. So kind of to begin our presentation today, I'm going to present you with the camel problem. Okay, now, the camel problem, some of you may have seen this before. This was created back in 1945 by a psychologist named Carl Duncker. Now, Duncker created this experiment, and it's been used in a variety of behavioral science analyses. Okay, and the experiment kind of works like this. Okay, let's say, so I'm the experimenter. I'm going to bring you into a room, I give you a candle, some thumbtacks, and some matches, and I say to you, your job is simply to attach that candle to the wall so that the wax doesn't drip onto the table. Okay? So that's really the gist of the candle problem. So now what do? Right? So some people look at it and go, okay, I'm going to take that thumbtack, I'm taking those thumbtacks and try to just tack the candle to the wall. Well, that really doesn't work. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I first saw this, my first thought was, I see those matches over there. I'm going to take those matches, or take one of those matches, I'm going to light it. I'm going to soften up the wax on one side of the candle, and I'm going to use that to adhere the candle to the wall. It's a somewhat creative idea, at least I thought so at the time, but it doesn't work. Eventually, usually it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, most people figure out the solution. Here it is. Okay? Now, the key to the solution here is to overcome something that we call functional fixedness. Okay? And by that, what we're saying is that if you look at that box, when you're functionally fixed, you only see a receptacle for the tags. But as you can see here, it can be used as a platform for the candle. That's the candle problem. Now, like I said before, it can be applied to a variety of different circumstances and situations. Let me tell you about an experiment using the candle problem that was done by another scientist by the name of Sam Glucksberg while he was at Princeton University. Matter of fact, Professor Glucksberg is still there. Okay, and what he was interested in was to look at the power of incentives. How do they work? Well, he gathered a group of participants, and he divided them into 2 groups. His control group, he told them, I'm going to time you to establish norms, right? How long does it typically take to solve a problem like this? But his other group, he offered this group rewards. He said, if you're in the top 25% of the fastest times, we'll give you $5. If you're the fastest of the entire day, we'll give you $20. Now, this experiment was done by Professor Glucksberg many years ago, a few decades ago, actually. And so adjusted for inflation, it was a pretty good incentive, right? So now I have a question for you. How much faster did the rewards group come up with the answer? Well,
Dr. Jeff, got any
on
comments?
average, 3.5.
I'm just waiting for questions or answers. I haven't got any questions yet, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Then I'll keep going. Yeah. Okay. Believe it or not, it took the rewards group, on average, 3.5 minutes longer to solve the problem. Now, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? If you think about it, I mean, if you want people to perform better, you reward them, right? This is where the whole idea of bonuses come in, commissions. We find ways to incentivize them. You know, that's how we think it works. But that's not what's happening here. Right? We give them the incentive, these rewards that were designed to do what? To sharpen their thinking and accelerate their creativity. And just the opposite happened. It seems to have dulled their thinking and have blocked their creativity. And you know what's most interesting about this experiment? This is not an aberration. This has been replicated over and over again for nearly 40 years. And there have been consistent results, right? These contingent motivators, if you do this, then you get that, work in some circumstances, but for a lot of tasks, they either don't work or often they do harm. This is one of the most robust findings in social science and also one of the most ignored. All right, now, I want to spend the remainder of our time here talking about and comparing and contrasting extrinsic motivators, okay, carrots and sticks, to intrinsic motivators. And I'm going to tell you that if you look at the science, it's not even close, right? There is a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And what's really alarming here is that our business operating systems, a lot of the assumptions that we base some of our decisions on about how we motivate people, how we apply our human resources, how we deploy them, they're built really almost primarily around these extrinsic motivators, these carrots and sticks. Now, for a lot of tasks, and I'm going to refer to these tasks as 20th century tasks, they work fine. But for more of our 21st century tasks, when things aren't so linear, right, these reward and punishment approaches don't work. And oftentimes, they do harm. So let's take a look at a kind of a variation on the whole experiment thing, right? So Glucksberg did another experiment that was somewhat similar when he presented the problem in a slightly different way. Look at this. We're going to look right now. I want you to focus on the left side, right? Same deal, right? Got a bunch of people together, control group, experiment group. He tells the control group, hey, we're going to time you for norms and all that kind of good stuff. Experimental group, there's going to be a reward here, all right? So in this instance, what happened? Well, this time, the incentivized group was the runaway victors. They won by a long shot. Well, why? What's different between the picture you're looking at right now, okay, on the left side of our screen, and the picture we showed you the first time, the original Campbell problem? Well, if you take a look in this one, the tacks are already out of the box. And when the tacks are out of the box, it makes it pretty simple, right? We've now eliminated the whole element of functional fixedness. It's right there before our eyes. So here's proof positive that these if-then rewards work really well for these sorts of tasks, right? When the rules are simple, the destination is clear, they work great. And why do they work so great? Well, rewards, by their very nature, narrow our focus and concentrate our mind. That's why they work, right? And so for tasks like this, when the tasks are out of the box, it's obvious what it is that we need to do, they work great. But for the real Campbell problem, right, we don't want to be looking straight ahead. We don't want to be like horses with blinders on, because oftentimes the answers that we're looking for are going to be out there on the periphery. They're not going to be right in front of us. So these incentives, this idea that, if we're driving to get this, these if, but, or contingent kind of things, tends to narrow our focus and really undermine our ability to be creative. Right? So, I'm sorry about that. Okay, now here's another interesting experiment. This one was actually done by a guy named Dan O'Reilly. Okay, and Dan O'Reilly is one of the great economists in our country today. Dan O'Reilly is now on faculty at Duke University. But previously, when this experiment that I'm going to share with you was done, he was actually working at MIT. And essentially, what he did was they gave a bunch of people a bunch of different tasks to do, right? And they gave them a bunch of different games. And these games involve things like creativity, motor skills, concentration, okay? And they offered them 3 levels of reward, right? Small reward, medium reward, large reward. If you do really well, you get the large reward on down. Well, what happened? These are the results. As long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they were expected. Right? The higher the pay, the better the performance. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to, get this, poorer performance. So as soon as we have to engage cognitive skill, if it's simply about a reward, we find that performance goes down. Okay, now that was an American experience. So we said, let's see if there's some cultural bias here. Is it maybe that the rewards weren't large enough? So the researchers Okay, Dan Ariely and his colleagues, they went to Madurai, India, okay, where the standard of living is significantly less than it is here in America. So the rewards here that were modest by our standards were, are pretty meaningful there. So we used the same deal, right? A bunch of games, 3 levels of rewards. What happened? Well, people offered the medium level of rewards did no better than those offered the small rewards. But this time, people offer the highest rewards, they did worst of all. As you can see here, in 8 of the 9 tasks we examined across 3 experiments, higher incentives led to worse performance. Now, I feel like most Americans just scratch their head and say, how does this make sense, right? This must be some kind of, this is crazy. It doesn't kind of fit our business dogma, okay? Now, these are not what I would call particularly left-leaning or socialist-leaning kind of economists. These guys, the 3 researchers here, were from MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and the University of Chicago. And this particular research was actually sponsored by the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. Now, that's the American experience. So now we're going to say, okay, let's see what happens in Europe. Maybe the Europeans are different. Okay, so we went to the London School of Economics. Now, the London School of Economics, for those of you who don't know, is the alma mater of 11 Nobel laureates in economics. And they're the training ground for a lot of our greatest economic thinkers. Now, in June of 2009, some economists there did a meta-analysis of 51 studies of pay-for-performance plans inside organizations. And here were the results of that meta-analysis. Okay? We find that financial incentives can result in a negative impact on overall performance. There's a mismatch, my friends, between what science knows and what business does. What's most worrisome about this is as we stand here coming out of the greatest recession of my lifetime, and I'm guessing probably the lives of everyone else who are in attendance to this webinar, okay, our businesses are making decisions about talent and people that are based on outdated assumptions, unexamined approaches, and really a lot of what they do is rooted more in folklore than it is in science. And if we really want to get out of this economic mess, if we really want to create high performance on those definitional tasks of the 21st century, if we want to be able to separate ourselves, right, the solution is simply not to do more of the wrong stuff. Right? It's not about enticing people with sweeter carrots or threatening them with bigger or sharper sticks. And we need a whole new approach.
Milton.
I have some good news for you. I know that so far it's been pretty grim. Yes.
Victor here is speaking. Let me see if I'm correct in putting this into context, because the type of incentives you're talking about for what I would call rote tasks, it does work, but when you bring in cognitive skills, in other words, when people need to think, even in the smallest degree, this age-old, 100-year-old incentive concept simply doesn't work, and exponentially, the more you try it, the worse it works. But that's just a quick summary. But in contrast or in context to the type of jobs that people are performing now, we're really no longer in the 20th century industrial model of manufacturing plants. We've become a service industry country and economy. And so therefore what we're looking for is workers who can increasingly think on their feet, solve problems on their feet, and interact with each other in a cognitive way, so that not only is what you're saying true, but it's being exacerbated by the type of jobs we're creating in this country and in the way that businesses need to evolve. So even more so, given our job forecasting for the present and future, this seems to be, this issue is even compounded. Am I correct in that?
Victor, you're absolutely spot on. Probably, and the only thing I would add to that, actually in support of what you just said, is if you look at the way our economy has changed, and like you said, a lot of those simple linear kind of tasks we don't really do in America anymore. Right? We found them cheaper to do one of two ways. We can either do those cheaper through technology, right? We can develop some kind of computer program or algorithm that can do a lot of those kind of rote tasks for us. Or we can outsource those tasks to lower cost countries who do them more cheaply for us. So if we're looking at the United States, if we're looking at Western Europe, we're looking at, certain parts of Asia, the real avenue for growth and advantage moving forward is through these more cognitive kind of skills that don't really react well to the old carrot and stick approach. So you're absolutely correct.
Thanks, Milton. Let's keep rolling on. Appreciate it.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so like I said, the good news is, though, that the same scientists who have done all this research and have pretty much proven unequivocally that these carrot and stick approaches don't tend to work for most of the type of tasks that our employees that our economy needs today, they have given us an answer, okay? And basically what they have found is that intrinsic motivators are really the driving force, right? And there are these three things. Autonomy, right? Autonomy is the urge to direct our own lives. Mastery. Mastery is the desire to get better and better at something that we say matters. And purpose is really our yearning to do something that is larger than ourselves. These are the three building blocks for really a different operating system, if you will, for our businesses. Now, for most of the rest of our time here today, I'm going to talk to you primarily about autonomy. If anybody has any questions about mastery or purpose, I'd be more than happy to address those. But we're going to look at this, right? Now, as Victor just mentioned, about 100 years ago, we came up with the idea of management, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's an idea. It's not, it's not natural. It's not a bird. It's not a tree. It's not a plant. It's not a bug, right? It's something that we invented. It's like like a television set, like your computer monitor, right? And it doesn't mean it's going to work forever. Now, the idea of management is great if, in fact, what you're looking for is compliance, right? But if you want engagement, self-direction works a heck of a lot better. Now, you're starting to see some beginnings of this in business, right? And I'm going to give you a few examples from the first stirrings of this kind of stuff. Now, I don't know if anybody on the call, anyone attending this webinar, has ever heard of a company called Atlassian. Okay, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Atlassian, but Atlassian is a software company in Australia, and they do something that really does enhance autonomy pretty significantly. A couple of times a year, they tell all of their engineers that for the next 24 hours, they want them to work on anything that they want to work on, but it can't be part of their regular job, okay? And so these engineers can spend this time doing whatever they like. They want to come up with a cool patch for some code that they're having a challenge with, some kind of a hack, whatever. They can develop whatever that they want to develop. And then they have to present whatever they've been working on to their teammates and the rest of the company, okay, the following day. Now, they refer to these days as FedEx days. They call them FedEx days simply because you absolutely positively have to deliver something overnight, right? Now, it's great for them that they're in Australia because if they're here, they'd probably get sued. It's pretty big trademark infringement. But the idea here is what they found is through these FedEx days, through this amount, these days where there's absolute autonomy, their workforce can work on whatever it is they want to work on, that they've come up with a tremendous amount of new and different products, a lot of software fixes that but for these FedEx days might not have existed. And this went so well at Atlassian that they actually kind of latched on to another concept, and that concept is something called 20% time. Now, some of you may be familiar with the concept of 20% time. Right? 20% time is something that is in vogue at Google, and even before Google, the original kind of idea behind 20% time was actually first and foremost presented by 3M. Okay, and that you'd be surprised at the type of products and services that got developed during this 20% time. And 20% time, just like with FedEx Day, is when their employees were allowed to spend 20% of their work week working on whatever they want, however they want, with whoever they want. Okay, so they control the team, they control the method, they control the concept, the construct, everything. They control it. It's 20% time. And you'd be amazed at some of the products that were created during this 20% time. Who in this call has a Gmail account? Gmail is a 20% time project. Anybody on this webinar ever look at Google News? Google News is another 20% time project. How about a Post-it note? Anybody here ever use Post-it notes? Have any on your desk right now? It's a 20% time project. Okay, so, but there's even a more radical approach. That's something called results-only work environment, or a ROW. Now, a ROW was created by two American consultants, Callie Ressler and Jody Thompson. And essentially, what the ROW is that, as it says, results-only work environment. People don't have schedules. Right? They show up when they want to show up. They don't have to be in the office at a certain time, or at any time for that matter. They just have to get their work done. Now, one of their big clients is Edmunds. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the website Edmunds.com. They're a huge proponent of a ROW, or group, results-only work environment. Okay. In this instance, meetings in these kind of environments are optional. You don't even have to attend meetings. Sounds kind of crazy, but what are the results here? What happens? Well, across the board, here's what we get. Productivity, up significant. Employee engagement, up significant. Employee satisfaction, up dramatically. Surprisingly, even customer satisfaction goes up. The one thing that drops, turnover. Turnover goes down. Now, timing, mastery, and purpose, okay? From my perspective, these are the building blocks for a new way of doing things. Now, I know some of you might be listening to this and saying, that sounds nice. It sounds utopian, you know, but I'm not sure it's going to work. Well, to that I say, you know what? Here's some proof. I'm going to ask some of you guys on the phone. I'm sure most of you remember the mid-'90s. Anybody remember the Microsoft Encyclopedia Encarta?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Let's think about Encarta. Right. Now, Microsoft, one of America's most successful and wealthy corporations, they decided they were going to have an online encyclopedia. So what did they do? Right. They deployed all the right incentives. They had professional managers. They had professionals who wrote articles and edited these articles by the thousands. Right. The managers oversaw the entire project to make sure it came in on budget and on time. And then a few years later, another encyclopedia got started. It's a different model, right? Anybody know what the name of that one is?
Wikipedia.
You ever hear of Wikipedia?
Wikipedia,
exactly. Wikipedia, right? What are the rules of Wikipedia? Well, people do it for fun, right? Nobody gets paid. Nobody's ever made a dime off of Wikipedia, right? They do it because they like it. Right? Think about those three things we outlined: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. They line up almost perfectly with the Wikipedia model. Now, it's only 15 years ago, right? We had asked a bunch of economists and said, hey, I've got these two different models for creating an online encyclopedia. And they go head to head. And if you told this panel of economists that, this Wikipedia model, no control, people do it because they want to, they do it when they want to, they're just having fun, they're getting better at stuff. You told them that that model was going to win, they probably would essentially get a drug test, right? But we both know, everybody on this call knows what's actually happened. Right? Wikipedia is still around. I don't know the last time I ever saw or spoke to someone who looked at it in Carter. Right? Now, I know some of this stuff sounds awfully radical. Some of you might be saying, hey, you know what? I hear you. Sounds interesting. I just can't see us implementing this where I work, or I just haven't gotten comfortable enough to implement this where I work. Is there a way that we can kind of move in this direction without taking such a radical step? Well, there is. Okay, and what I would suggest to you is you create what I consider to be boundary conditions. And within these boundary conditions, you provide the opportunity for your employees, your work teams, to work autonomously. And you give them some autonomy. And there's 4 different categories of these boundary conditions. Right? We have the expectations or / results. In other words, what do we say needs to be the outcomes here? The non-negotiables. Okay, what are the things that the team can't touch? What are the third rails? There might be some third rails in your organization or around this particular project that you want these people working on. Okay, what's their level of authority? What can they do without speaking to senior leadership or senior management? And then 4th and finally, what are the time guidelines? Okay, when are they expected to have this thing completed? When are they expected to turn this in? Okay, so within those conditions, right, the expectations are non-negotiables, the level of authority that we allow people to have, and 4th and finally, those time guidelines. Within that framework, we allow these work teams to operate, okay, in the way that they best see fit. So if some of this stuff seems a little bit too extreme for you, at least initially, this is a nice intermediary step. Okay, you can use this boundary conditions model. Now, in closing, I'd just like to remind you once again, there is a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And hopefully, in closing, we've learned 3 things. Okay, first thing, these 20th century rewards, okay, these extrinsic motivators, the if you do this, then you get that, okay, that we tend to think of as almost a natural part of doing business, they do work, but only in a surprisingly narrow band of circumstances. The second thing, okay, that hopefully I've made clear during this presentation is that these if-then rewards, they often destroy creativity. Because remember, creativity often happens on the periphery of life. It's not necessarily right in front of you. And whenever you create a rewards, these extrinsic reward systems, we tend to narrow our focus, right? It's kind of like a horse with blinders on, right? We narrow our focus, and oftentimes the answers we'll find it on the periphery, okay? And 3, right? The secret of high performance, it isn't about rewards and punishment. It's about engaging people when they're intrinsic motivators, right? Giving them autonomy, helping them master something, and giving them a purpose, tying into their why. Okay, people do things because they matter. Now, at least for me, here's really kind of like the cool part, is that the science for me simply confirmed kind of what I already kind of knew in my heart, right? That, I know those are the things that drive me. So if we can repair the mismatch between what science knows and what business does, if we bring our notion of motivation out of the Stone Age and into the 21st century, if we can get past all these lazy, dangerous ideologies of carrots and sticks, okay, we can strengthen business, we can strengthen our economy, we can solve a lot of the candle problems that face us as individuals, as companies, and as a country. And maybe, if we're lucky, we can start to change the world. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you found some of what we talked about today interesting, and I'd like to open up the floor for questions. Victor?
Thank you, Milton. We have a number of comments, not necessarily in context of a question, but and I appreciate those who have been patient and submitted some comments. Let me just cover a few of them in context. One was, it was kind of funny, but managers are losing control. And with that, I got another comment from our colleague, Dr. Jeff, who saw that, replies that management may be losing control, but management is traditionally good for compliance. Self-direction of employees is good for engagement. So we do have sort of a threat here to middle managers, and it seems to me that's where the mindset needs to change first, because I think employees are very willing to engage and contribute and solve their own problems and be autonomous and be accredited for what they can contribute. But managers may be threatened by this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, I think that Dr. Jeff hit it exactly on point, is that, management is really about compliance. And that if you want real engagement, if you want real growth, then it is about, autonomy. And you're right. I mean, that's a scary thought for people who spent their entire careers, working to get in a position of quote-unquote authority. And now all of a sudden, if you listen to what we just discussed in the webinar today, and if you read the research, you go, wow, you're telling me that I become obsolete. And here's what I would say to that, is that you're not obsolete. Okay, the rules of the game have changed, right? Because now, instead of, having to have a great amount of technical skill or a lot of the compliance kind of mindset, now people in positions of authority really need to move to some different roles, right? We need to start thinking about in terms of us being better coaches, right? Helping people understand, helping people grow. Okay, that's a skill and something that we still need leaders and managers to do.
Right.
Okay. Another is to be an organizational architect. Okay, and say, okay, how does all this fit together? How is the world changing today, and how does our business model fit the way the world is changing? What is it that we need to do? How do we need to redirect the organization? So those are just a couple of ideas, Victor, about how we can address, some of those concerns.
Yeah, I agree with that, Milton. Managers need to focus on results and not the hyper-management of people, making sure when I look at your 20% free time, that's my term, it's my own first thought is, whoa, how do we know these people are not going to be spinning off on creating these second pet rock or something irrelevant to the business model? But that's where the manager does need to step in, correct, and keep them aligned with the broad purpose of that organization and strategic goals?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you're right. Like I said, this doesn't make management obsolete. It just changes their role a little bit. You're absolutely right. We do need to keep people focused. We do need to keep them, engaged in what the overall strategic vision is, or what is it we're trying to achieve as an organization overall. And then you leave the particulars up to the individual. So absolutely.
So thank you, Milton. And another comment was regarding your 3-tier. Let me jump over to my notes here. And
Sure.
The autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We sort of discussed autonomy in that the threat to managers and giving employees control. Mastery is allowing people to develop their own intrinsic knowledge and talent. But the purpose is a conversation I often have as a marketer and brander with companies, and really communicating and getting people excited about the purpose for showing up to work, quite simply. And I know we have a successful realtor on the call because I've seen his name. I know him. To me, real simple, the purpose of giving people a home where they can raise a family. I mean, there's tremendous purpose of getting up in the middle of the day and helping people realize that dream. A more pedestrian client we have is an OEM manufacturer for in the automobile industry, manufacturer and distributor. And it may be a little hard to get excited about gaskets and fuel pumps, but there's actually quite a lot of passion within the automobile industry and the purpose for allowing people to, provide products and services that help people further their career, help stimulate the economy, which builds community, and quite simply people's passion about automobiles and how they get excited about it and talk about it and live it, and both in the weekday and the weekend. So I strongly believe there's purpose in every single job because there's purpose in every single company. And would you agree with that? And how would you, enhance that thought?
Okay. Victor, absolutely, I would agree with that 100%. And here's another thing that managers need to do, since we're going to be transitioning away from that kind of command and control model. The way that you really tie into the purpose is you need to make people aware of not just what you do, okay, because like I said, there are a lot of computer companies out there. There are a lot of automobile companies out there. There are a lot of realtors out there, whatever the business is, okay? But the way that you really create purpose for your team and for the people who work for you, from my perspective, is if they understand why you do what it is that you do. That's the connection, right? There's a lot of realtors out there, but here's why we got into the real estate business. And you articulate that clearly and purposefully. And then the people on your team can connect with it. That will resonate with them. Now, it's not going to resonate with everybody, but it's going to resonate with the right people, and you'll get the right people on your team. And that gives you a shared sense of purpose, because what you believe about your profession is what they believe about your profession, okay? And everybody's pulling in the same direction. You're right. It might be challenging to get excited, at least for me personally, get excited about gaskets. But if we talk about the importance of, say, that gasket, we believe that the reason that we're in this business is to help people. Everybody can't afford a brand new car every year, but when we provide them with quality parts, okay, and a quality service, so that they can maximize the dollars that they spend, on their automotive purchases, that's why we do what we do. That's our purpose. That's our why. And I think if we can create that kind of synergy, that kind of idea, we communicate that over and over and over again. I think you mentioned communication. You communicate that over and over and over again with your people, you can create that shared purpose.
Gentlemen, I've been listening and been fascinated. Milton, you have really drawn out in contemporary terms the things that have made the world a different place for the last couple hundred years, and have set in place a wave of change that's now making its way through all kinds of countries around the world. I'm speaking now as the Chairman Emeritus of the Advisory Council on Competitiveness, and so I'm wanting to say that your non-negotiables are really quite important. It seems to me that the word non-negotiables, as you're using it here, is very similar to what we called human rights back in the beginning of this country. And it was the Declaration of Human Rights at the level of the individual citizen that set off the revolution in the way we live and the way we breathe and the way we seek our destinies, not only here but around the world. It's still going on, and it's going on with great strength. So what I'm trying to suggest is that autonomy, mastery, and purpose may be, for the 20th century, human rights that we need to really carve into the granite block of future time. And sort of create not only a milestone, but a centennial or a millennial stone for the human race. Along with that, I'd add some other values, beginning with respect and results focus and so forth and so on that you've included under your boundary conditions. Of course, respect is the word that I would use to underwrite authority, and it has a deep intrinsic motive associated with it that's rooted in affiliation with others, the relationships that we hold near and dear, whether it's in the workplace or at home or in the broader community. But finally, I think what's really crucial is that time is not absolute anymore. It's not even relative. Time lives like anything else in different types in different places. It's an ecology. So time becomes something that is not only plastic, as the 19th and early 20th century people realized with scientific management, but we move into leadership from a way of thinking and being and feeling about our lives. Time becomes a function of intelligence. What is it that we are creating time-wise when we act upon the best intelligence available to us? So those are the questions that come up, and that's sort of my general response overall. Milton, you've been brilliant, very carefully and purposefully stated. The mastery of your subject matter is obvious, and I just want to point out that Milton is modeling the kind of independence or autonomy that many of us need to have in front of us day by day for inspiration. Thank you, Milton, a great deal.
Dr. Jeff, as always, it's been my great pleasure. Very insightful, a very unique way of looking at the boundary conditions model. I hadn't thought about it, but it is absolutely spot on, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
And gentlemen, thank you.
Well, we look forward to having you.
Jeff, go ahead.
We would look forward to having Milton. We look forward to having Milton back in future episodes because that's what I consider it. Milton's standing for this shift into an appropriate, humane worldview for the 21st century is something that I think we need to schedule going forward. I'm not going to force you to commit online. That would be wrong. What I would like to do is just suggest, Milton, that you give us some thought on this and help us understand how better we may present your insights and your wisdom to our growing audience here and around the nation. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Jeff. This is Victor Dominguez speaking. Milton, if you could flip to the next slide, we'll just wrap up some housekeeping. What's most important, folks, is that we take the awareness from this webinar and really put it into action. And we want to have you reach out to us because as you think of your workplace, think of how you can communicate with your employees, increase engagement, create autonomy, mastery, and purpose within your workforce. We're here to talk to you about it. We're not here to sell. We're here to collaborate, and we want your interaction with us so that we collectively can change the workplace across this country and across the globe. So, Jeff, I'm not sure this email address is correct, but you can certainly get a hold of me at Victor at Business Performance USA. Dr. Jeff at Business Performance USA is, I believe, the correct email address. And
Dr. Jeff.
Okay, dr.jeff at Business Performance USA. And we encourage you to take advantage of that. We're here, we're executive volunteers, including Milton, and we want to see your organizations grow. And one last thing I'm going to jump over to is give you a quick preview of our website, businessperformanceusa.org. You can come here and sign up, become a member. It's all free, and we have over 50 webinars for you to learn from. Here's there's my own personal page, and this is the experience that you can have is interacting with the leaders of this organization, including Milton and fellow colleagues. We're really all on the same plane, highly experienced executives that are open to sharing our knowledge and experience with each other for the betterment of our workplace. And let's get out there and be prosperous, make money, and grow our communities. So again, we invite you to sign up with Business Performance USA. Just click on this button here, and we're happy to bring you into our community and share our practices with you. On that, Milton, again, thank you so much. Thank you to our attendees for spending this time with us, and we look forward to interacting with everyone soon. That's it. Have a good day.
Sounds great. Take care of all. Bye-bye.
Bye, Milton.